In this week's discussion, another historical Greek leader will be introduced. Odysseus was also a king, just as Agamemnon was, but rather quite different, as he was labeled a charismatic leader of his time. As you have all read chapter 4, Odysseus is the king of Ithaca, and he was one of the rare few leaders that was reluctant to join the Trojan War. However, in the end, was the very person that devised the strategy of the Trojan horse that won the war. As a charismatic leader, Odysseus is cunning, clever, master of speech, and has a great influence on his followers. His journey home would challenge him and his soldiers to the utmost, and this is where we discover how strong and important Odysseus really was. Moral leadership was shown through his resistance and overall main focus on his trip back home while in the land of the Lotus Eaters. He was a role model, essentially, to his followers as he did not succumb to the temptations of the drug, unlike his soldiers. In Book 9 of the Odyssey, Odysseus and his men were trapped in the home of a Cyclops named Polyphemus. They went in for food and drink, however, they were discovered by the Cyclops and were trapped in the cave. Odysseus knew he could never win a fight with the Cyclops, so he devised a plan where he and his men would wait until Polyphemus was asleep, then burn his eye, forcing Polyphemus to cry for help from the other Cyclopses, where they will open the boulder that had trapped them in the cave. This kind of strategic thinking is the same kind of thinking that saved his life and his men's a number of times, which makes him the charismatic leader we know today. Even with his large influence on his followers and his cleverness, he is faced with the burden of always being available to his followers and being the one that overcomes challenges constantly. In other words, Odysseus' soldiers needed him because if he wasn't available to them, everything and everyone would fall apart. A couple of examples of this would be in Book 12, when Odysseus and his soldiers were faced with the sun god Helios and his cattle. Odysseus clearly instructed orders not to eat the cattle, but as soon as he wasn't present anymore, the soldiers disobeyed him. Also in Book 10 of the Odyssey, a similar situation occurred when the god of wind, Aeolus, gives Odysseus a bag of wind in order for him and his crew to reach Ithaca. But when Odysseus steps away from his role as the leader, the soldiers become curious and open the bag, sending their ship back to Aeolia. As you can see from this situation, Odysseus has great responsibility not only over himself but for others, as they could potentially deceive him if he is not always alert and/or present. Another prominent characteristic of the charismatic leader Odysseus would be his personal risk-taking for the advancement of his cause. In Book 12 of the Odyssey, he and his crew encounter the sirens Scylla and Charybdis. During their first encounter with the sirens, Odysseus tells his men to cover their ears with wax so they're unable to hear the song of the sirens, and told his men to tie him to the mast of the ship, putting himself at risk. During his second encounter with Scylla and Charybdis, he was given an ultimatum to kill 6 of his men in order for the others, including himself, to survive, where he again put himself at risk, even though his men took the fall in the end. I hope you have learned something about Odysseus and his type of leadership that will help you answer this week's prompt. Good luck, everyone, from Group 2A.